Hi everyone, we are just about to get started. If you can hear my voice, I see there are already 5 of you who have joined the live stream. So I see Tribeni, you are in UK right now. That's great. It's wonderful to see you here. And the rest of you also say hi so we know the systems are working. It's all ready to go. We will be starting in exactly 1 minute. So Raju is saying, hello. All right. Voice, I see there are already some echo. That echo should go. Raju says, hello, Tanvi. Good to be here from Jeddah. That's fabulous. This is turning out to be a really international group. We are live streaming on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. And it is such a special finale that we have in place for everybody today. So in just a minute, we're going to get started. But like I said, if you're watching, whether on YouTube or LinkedIn, say hi and let us know where you are watching from. All right, it is time for us to go live. We have been live streaming now for the last 5 days, and the sprint has been called "The Crisis is the Curriculum," and the focus has been on this idea that the post-pandemic leaders are being created here and now. And there are things that we need to learn to engage with in the here and now that will prepare us to be better leaders of the world that is coming to us tomorrow. And we have had some fabulous speakers. We had a very iconic senior leader from the healthcare industry. We had a female Black Hawk former pilot from the US Army. We had a journalist and entrepreneur who are following their passions and they sang for us. And we had Rahul, who's the head of digital transformation. So we've been getting at this issue of, hey, Kyle from South Africa, I see you. Hi, Satish, I see you. We've been getting at this whole post-pandemic conversation by first saying, hold on a second. We need to talk about a few things before we learn how to lead in the post-pandemic world. And so it's interesting because we want to examine the leadership phenomena from many different angles, whether it's the personal angle of self-leadership that Andrew Bryant talked about, where he helped us understand the concept of learned helplessness that some of us might be getting into nowadays, because it's just so easy to take on the doom and gloom and what's not going right. We looked at it from the perspective of what can we learn from the way healthcare is handling this. We looked at it from the perspective of how is digital transformation helping in what is going on and the cross-industry dependence that we need to understand. It's not enough, if you are from HR, it's not enough. If you're from marketing, it's not enough. If you're from technology, it's not enough. If you're from legal, it's not enough. It's not enough because you need to be able to stand in another person's shoes and see the crisis from a different vantage point, because there's a whole bunch of interdependencies. So having empathy for others in your ecosystem, for others in your company, for others who are your clients is an extremely important skill that we want to learn now in the crisis and take with us post-pandemic. So today is the final episode of the 5-day sprint. And I thought it would be helpful to make this conversation deeply personal. And that is why today I am absolutely delighted to be bringing on someone very special. I discovered our guest just a couple of weeks ago. He was a part of Speaker Aid, where a lot of speakers had gotten together to raise money for the pandemic relief funds. And I heard him and his voice, and I absolutely fell in love. And I said, I just have to figure out some way to bring him on and help him, meet all of you and for you to meet him. So let me bring on our guest for the show today, Peter Katz. Hey, Peter.
Hi, how's it going?
Oh, it's so wonderful to have you. And you're coming to us live from Canada. And it's early in the morning, so I really appreciate your being here. I'm going to take a quick second and I'm going to read for everyone what a fabulous background you have, because I want everyone to know what a rich career you have had. So Peter is a Juno Award, Canadian Screen Award, and two-time Canadian Folk Music Award nominated singer and songwriter. And he has spent more than 10 years playing to sold out premier venues around the world. And CBC host Tom Peters described him as one of the most heartfelt, beautiful, and vulnerable records of the year. This was his release, We Are the Reckoning, about which he said that. And Peter's music has been featured on several TV shows and movies like Lethal Weapon. So actually, I think, Peter, you are the biggest celebrity I have actually ever had on my show. I think like the star power piece of it. And Peter is also a 4-time TEDx fellow and a gifted public speaker. I am sure you are going to be moved with his insights and his music tonight. I want to believe that this is the first ever in the history of LinkedIn where we are having a singer share his new single with us. So this is quite a historic moment. If you can please give a virtual round of applause. There are these clapping hands on your screen, and welcome Peter to this conversation. So Peter, let me begin by asking you, right? I want to believe that a rock star like you, who's been playing to, filled arenas, always was able to do that. Like you woke up, you were this prodigy who was playing and everybody loved your music and, they were all buying your records. But tell me, what has the journey been like for you?
Well, to be clear, I play more to filled theaters than filled arenas. I'm not quite at the Justin Bieber level yet, but working. But I do get to play to many people on a regular basis, and certainly there was many years of playing to nobody. I live in Canada, and most Canadian tours are, you wake up in the morning, you drive about 8 hours. You sound check, play your show, talk to people afterwards, sell your merchandise, get some sleep, get up, drive 8 hours, do it again. Most major cities are about 8 hours apart. So it's a long haul across the country. And I probably played, in my early career, I was doing 150 to 200 shows a year. And most of those shows were to nobody. I wasn't making any money, sleeping on floors and couches, and there was just a long period where it felt like it was not going to work. And I often in my talk I often talk about this kitchen floor moment where I walked into my kitchen one day and I said to my friend at the time, I said, "It's not working." And as I said those words, "It's not working," all of that energy that I'd been using to kind of pretend that everything was going great and everything was going okay, all of that energy just kind of fell out of me, and I literally collapsed to my kitchen floor and I cried and I just said, "It's not working." It was just such a devastating, frustrating moment. But it was very soon after that moment that actually I started seeing that it was working in all of these unexpected, amazing ways, and it kind of turned the corner right after one of my lowest moments, which is, I think an important lesson. It's like sometimes, you plant a seed in the ground and you're watering it and all you see is dirt and it's not working. But meanwhile, underneath it is kind of slowly working its way to the surface, and you have to just keep watering it. You have to keep giving it sunlight, and you have to keep believing that it's going to find its way there. And it's just a moment between it not working and it working all of a sudden. And so you have to kind of stay in it for the long haul, I feel.
Yeah, it's like they say, right? Don't quit just before the miracle, because you have no idea how close you might be to that miracle. But I think having that faith in your own vision, I think, is probably really important. Because I'm sure you might have had some people around you like, "Oh, forget about singing. Go do I don't know what it is that people do when they want to encourage others to drop their dreams." Yes. And start following a very traditional path. Because let's face it, I don't remember attending a class in school, in high school, in college, even which said, "Follow your dreams." I didn't attend that class, right?
Right.
So I remember you were telling me about that story about how you drove for miles and there were like those two people in the audience. I'd love to share that story with
Oh
others.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of my low points was playing a show in this small town in St. Catharines, Ontario. It was actually on a Sunday afternoon, which is like not a good time to play a gig. But I was playing on a Sunday afternoon, and there were two people in the audience, only two people, and somehow those two people, I don't know how, but they ended up getting into a fight with each other, and then they took it outside and beat each other up. And so I was literally just there by myself on this stage as these two people were having a fight out in the parking lot, and I was like, oh, this is a low moment. But it's funny. I feel like I often tell that story now in my talks, and I feel like it's funny that the dream doesn't always manifest exactly the way you think it's going to happen. Like when I decided I was going to be a singer songwriter, I thought I would play some shows. Somebody would walk up to me and be like, I'm going to make you a star, and then I was going to sign a record contract, and then I would play the arenas of the world. And yet my music career has brought me all of these unexpected places. Like, I do this mentoring work out in Alberta every summer, with youth, and the reason that I do that work is because this program had been using my music as part of their curriculum. And this is one of the best things that I do in my life, and it was not part of my plan to be doing this work with youth because I'm putting songs out in the world, and yet I wouldn't trade that for any arena in the world. And that's just one example of all the ways that by doing what I'm doing, I've succeeded, but it's not always the thing that you have on the plan on day one. Like it kind of shifts over time. And I think even my whole speaking career, or being on LinkedIn doing something like this with you, is just an example of, like, this is not like a typical outlet that I would have thought of me as a speaker, and sort of taking my lessons from having people fighting in the parking lot and sharing them. I wouldn't have imagined that when I decided to become a singer-songwriter, and yet I really love doing this work as a speaker and connecting with new people. And so you have to kind of allow the dream to evolve and let it surprise you, I think.
Yeah. Yes, I absolutely agree. Harlina is saying that's a great metaphor. Peter, I see some of you have joined in from India, and you're really excited to see Peter here. So you already have a fan following going on here on LinkedIn, Peter, which is great.
Awesome.
I want to ask everybody who's listening to what Peter had just said, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, how much space have you left in your life to let things emerge organically? I think one of the things about our relationship with uncertainty is, are we giving it enough breathing room, or are we trying to control every little piece of it? I mean, let's face it, I was not supposed to be doing LinkedIn lives, and nor was my great plan to get into academia and keynote speaking and books and all that. I was supposed to be an F-16 combat fighter pilot. Thank you very much. But life has a way about it. And I always tell people, I don't think I went where I wanted to go, but I think I've ended up where I needed to be. And having that space, the way you discovered, for serendipity to emerge, for life to unravel the way it is meant to, without trying to control every moment, I think is a great lesson I have taken away from your story, right? Because tell me about when you did walk into a packed room of people and you couldn't believe all these people were sitting there. That was that camp story you were telling right now, right? Tell us about that, because it's a perfect example of how you have plans, and then life has plans which may be even better than what you had imagined, right?
Yeah, I mean that moment actually happened just a couple of weeks after the crying on the kitchen floor moment. I where I felt like I had hit the bottom. I was doing another tour across Canada, and I was in this town called Fort Macleod in southern Alberta, and I had never heard of this town before, never been there before, and was anticipating nobody coming to this show, and yet there was a little bit of this mysterious factor in that I was booked at this 300-seat beautiful theater, and I was so confused as to why I was playing this beautiful place when I'd never been there before and didn't seem to have any kind of history there. And so, but I walked out on stage, and the place was just packed out, and they were screaming my name, and they knew all of my songs, and they were, they were just so excited that I was there, and I was playing the show, and I was just so confused as to what had happened. That, as I said earlier, after the show, when I was talking to these guys that had organized the show, they let me know that they run this program for teenagers where they take them, hiking and rock climbing and whitewater canoeing. But the focus of the program is not hiking and rock climbing and whitewater canoeing. It's giving these teens an opportunity to do things that challenge them, to develop empathy by supporting each other. And the program is free for them because they're earning high school credits. And so they had to create a curriculum in order to get it approved. And they created an emotional curriculum that has these different themes. And in order to anchor the themes of the learning, they had been using my songs for years. And I had no idea that this was happening. And those people now, like I said, they invited me to come work for them. I go out there every summer. I actually now run the program for part of the summer. And those people have become some of my best friends. And I had no idea that that was happening behind the scenes while I was, crying on my kitchen floor or playing in the bar, playing to nobody or two people fighting in the parking lot. But that was happening because of the care and the attention that I was putting into my music. Like, I was creating something that had a value to it. I just had to keep believing in it and let it find its way.
Yeah. It reminds me of that, one of my favorite quotes, which says, a teacher impacts eternity. You never know where their influence will end.
That's
And
so true. Yeah.
and I have not released any singles or played to packed auditoriums my music, but yeah, I do, speak. And I remember one time, I had written a case study on crisis and leadership. This was many years ago. It was a leadership and crisis case study. And I was looking online one day. I just kind of Googled to see, well, what's happening in the case study. And I saw like some 200-300 downloads. And I said, what is going on? Who is so interested, in this? It turns out that one of the European business schools had adopted that case study. And I didn't know, because they went to my university, they downloaded the case study, the students were using it. No one came back and told me, thank you very much for writing
Right.
this. But it's amazing when you find how far your work can go, even without your realizing it. And sometimes I think we get very hung up in the here and now. I have put this thing out, well, what came of it? And
Yeah.
you have no idea, right?
I think that the shift for me is like where you put your focus and attention and where you draw your motivation from. It's like if I had been drawing my motivation only from receiving word that it was working, then I would have stopped. But the motivation intrinsically was wanting to create something that I loved, wanting to create something that I connected with, wanting to create something that others could potentially connect with. And that's enough motivation for a lifetime. And so I feel like it sort of just reminded me that always to put my focus in what am I creating? How am I showing up for the things that I'm trying to do versus, is it working? Because it's you don't always know if it's working. And I bet there's stories out there where my music is part of somebody's life and I have no idea, and I will never know. And that's a good thing in a way. Obviously I want to know, but I can't possibly know. So I have to stay focused on the creation itself, the content itself.
Yeah. So talking about creation, and Dr. Joyce Carol is saying music is such a powerful thing for emotions, and clearly your music shows its care. So you have a new album coming out this fall, for everybody to know, and you have just released a couple of singles from that album, and I'm sure everybody like me is waiting with bated breath to hear that single with all of us who are live on LinkedIn. So if I could invite you to tell us a little bit about this song and then play for us, please.
Yeah, so thank you. This is the first single. It's called Paper Thin, and we just put it out about 2 weeks ago. And it's a song. I grew up in Montreal, and when I was 18 years old, I moved to Toronto to go actually to theater school. I went to Ryerson University here. And I had this place in Montreal that I had to be out of on August 31st, and I didn't get the keys to my place in Toronto until September 1st. So I had this one day where was of no fixed address. And so what I did was I drove from Montreal to Toronto with all the stuff in my back of my car, and I stopped just outside of Toronto because the hotels were cheaper there. And I had this night in this Motel 6. And it was kind of a big moment in my life, because I was moving to this new city. I didn't know anybody. I was sort of, pursuing this dream. And it was this big, significant moment. Anyway, 16 years later, I found myself in a moment of restart in my life again. A lot of changes had happened. And I actually had a month where I had no fixed address again. And so I ended up having this tour booked. And I went on this tour. And the last night of that tour happened to be in Montreal. So I had all of my stuff in my car for that whole tour. And on the last night of the tour, there I was driving from Montreal to Toronto again with all my stuff in the back of my car, needing to start my life over again. And I just decided intuitively almost to drive myself to that same Motel 6 that I had stayed at 16 years earlier and have another night there. Wow. And as I opened the door to my hotel room, I was so struck by this feeling that I had just walked out of that room a second earlier. And the time between those two moments of me leaving and me coming back, the time felt paper thin. Yeah. And yet, of course, like all of this stuff had happened. I mean, so much of, half of my life had happened. And so it's like the time felt paper thin and I felt paper thin. I felt this sense of vulnerability, literally some of my biggest fears had come true in my life. But there was also this new part of myself that I noticed where I was like, oh, my biggest fears have come true, and yet I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still standing. And so it felt like the start of this new unknown, but this new exciting kind of potential of, okay, what's ahead of me now? Because that chapter's kind of done. So it's really a song about kind of those things that we discover in ourselves through those hardest moments that we never would have discovered until we go through them.
That's so perfect. It's so perfect the time we are in. So if you can all give a virtual round of applause for Peter debuting his single on LinkedIn for the first time ever tonight, let's virtually celebrate this, and over to you, Peter.
All right, here we go. This is Paper Thin. I can barely even talk about it now, but I don't know any other way out. I have pushed myself so hard for all these years. Still it's not clear what for. And all the roads I drive no longer lead me home. I could fill an ocean with all that I don't know, and I was safer in the insides of those walls. But that's not all there is. Ooh. I know everything falls apart. Ooh. Just wasn't ready for light to hit that hard and like narrow space between the start and the end, or mirror that is now and then, or the insides that are showing through my skin. The paper thin, and when your biggest fear ends up coming true, it's when you find out what you had inside of you. And I am braver than I ever could have known. These days have shown that to me. I know everything falls apart. Ooh. Just wasn't ready for light. Hit that hard and like narrow space between the start and the end. Or the mirror that is now and then. Or the insides that are showing through my skin. The paper thin. I feel my eyes adjusting to the dark. I can see the light of far off stars. If I let myself get far enough away from the city of our lives, and like the whole night, never really have. I'm getting older. It's not all in my hands, but I will not be afraid of the insides that are showing through my skin. I'm paper thin. Paper thin now. Paper thin now. Paper thin.
That was beautiful, Peter. Just beautiful. Uh, People are saying it was truly mesmerizing. Hurley says it's just beautiful. I think you're such a gifted singer, and your energy just comes through that feeling of, the past is over, the new hasn't begun. And, I really like that line in that song that says, I'm braver than I had ever known. I think most of us don't ever realize how brave we can be till being brave is the only choice we have. So I'm receiving all the virtual applause that's coming in on the screen on your behalf. I'm sure you can see that later when you see the recording. Triveni saying that was just amazing. And I think one of the things that I definitely want to do as I look at my own work is how we can bring in a little bit more emotions and vulnerability and the arts into what we do, right? There is a need for bringing in the humanity of who we are back into our organizations, and I think that music is such a powerful way of doing that. Doug is saying it's a great song for these times. I know, it's perfect, right? How these things come together. So tell me something. Do you ever worry about your songs not landing with people? Like, you think it's a great song, but do you ever think about the audience and saying, oh my God, I don't know, that was an awful song or something, right? Because there's, creativity, I really do believe creativity is nothing but taking a risk, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know whether it's going to work or not. And our organizations, we keep saying, oh, we need to be more creative and innovative, but we are so averse to taking risk. So tell us, from the perspective of an artist, what is it like when you're about to release something? Do you worry about it not landing? How do you manage that piece of it?
I mean, definitely, I have no control over, my music meaning anything to anybody. So for me, the most important thing is that I love it and that I don't put anything out into the world that, even if not a single person likes it, I can still like it. That to me is the most important thing. And it's also interesting to me, some of the things that I've put the most effort into, trying to make them work, have, some of them kind of worked, and some of the things that were just me following a random impulse or doing something, just because, have been the most successful things. Like I was doing this big concert when I was releasing my first The Last to Know album, and I was, had put so much energy into creating this concert, and my mom lived 7 hours away, so I was like, oh, I wish I could record this so at least she could see it. So I just recorded the audio, and then but another friend of mine happened to be coming. I invited him to come. He's like, well, let me bring some cameras and I'm just going to shoot this for you. And then I was like, okay. And then that ended up getting me nominated for a Juno Award, which is like our Canadian Grammy Awards. It's like the highest award, and it was a thing that I essentially made for free, whereas I made an album for $40,000. Or I did this. A friend of mine was getting married, and him and his wife wanted me to play their wedding, and they actually wanted me to do this Beyonce song. So I learned this cover of Halo for them and played it at their wedding, and he was so grateful for it that he's like, oh, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to shoot a video of you playing this song. He's a filmmaker. He's like, let me just do this for you for free. We're so grateful that you played our wedding. So he came and he shot me playing the song, put it up on YouTube, and it just hit 12 million views a couple of days ago. Whereas, the music video that I spend $20,000 making and all of the energy and marketing and publicity, has like 150,000 views, so you never, it's just, a lot of it is not in my control. I feel like, kind of like what I was talking about earlier around, being motivated by the sort of outside feedback or being motivated by really creating something that I really believe in. I feel like the same applies, when I'm putting my songs out in the world is my job is to just make sure that every single thing that I put out into the world, I would be willing to stand on a mountaintop and be like, I love this. And even sometimes I make something and after a while I don't love it anymore. But at the time it was like the best that I could do. And I feel like you have to iterate, you have to put things out there sometimes and sort of put the crayons down and be like, okay, here's the drawing I made. And then the process of putting it out there, then you see like, oh, I could have done that differently, or that felt really good to sing in my bedroom, but now when I sing it in front of an audience, I realize that the second verse probably could be better. So you go back and you change and you evolve, but you don't sort of have a new step to stand on unless you lay the first step, and then you lay the next step, and then you lay the next step. I've made 7 albums in my life. This really is the first full album where cover to cover, I love every single song. I'm so proud of it, and I wouldn't change a thing, and that took me 15 years to be able to make that, but I wouldn't have made that if I didn't make all the albums that had all the, all the things that I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe I put that out in the world. But at the time, it was the best that I knew. So yeah.
That's so many lessons for us in in the corporate world in there as well, is just getting started, because every act of creativity feeds into the next act and feeds into the next act. And it's a self-reinforcing loop of sorts. But if you just don't even try and you just don't even begin, and I actually think I know what you're saying about looking back at some previous things you might have created and saying, oh my God, what was I thinking? But that's the most amazing part, because you look at it, like how far I have come, how much I have grown, since the time I did this last time. So, there is that process to it, and nothing is lost, ever. Nothing is lost, right?
No, and the fact that you're like the fact that you're looking back on it and being like, oh my gosh, I can do so much better, that's all the evidence you need that you've evolved, because your taste has evolved, your capacities have evolved, and you can look at this thing and you're like, oh, I can do that better now, or I could do it could improve on that. But the reason that you can look at it critically and with that sense of what you would do differently is because you've grown from the moment that you made it. That's all the evidence you need right there.
That's right. So some people are encouraging that we should be trying to do a duet. Believe me, I know how to stick to my lane. I don't think I shall be trying that tonight at all. Although I have to say that I once was compelled, I felt like I should sing at this farmer's market in New Zealand. So I went to the guy who was singing. He had a guitar. I said, I've had this dream that I would like to sing once in public. Can I sing with you? So I sang with him. I think we sang Hotel California. Mm-hmm. And the highlight of my day was somebody came and dropped $1. I was like, all right, maybe there's an alternate career. Okay. So Shailesh says, with the lockdown continuing in most places, the space between having a sound mind and going insane is truly paper thin these days. Let music be with you, lift you up, and keep your spirits sane. Harlina saying that's the spirit. Love what you do, believe in what you do. Absolutely agree. So one more question as we are kind of wrapping this up, and then
Hmm.
perhaps another request. If you're with me in getting Peter to sing another song, make sure you drop in a heart or an applause or whatever's on your screen, because I really do want him to sing a second song, which I really love from the same album. So your songs seem quite personal,
Hmm.
and the one that I'm going to hope you will sing for us is also quite personal. And you know, part of the creative process is putting something out in the world that you truly feel connected with,
Hmm.
that embodies who you are. And at the same time, it's like sharing a part of yourself in the open world and you don't know where you're going. There are lots of
Hmm.
hearts coming in, Peter, so you better get ready for the next song, yeah? So that's a vulnerable process of putting it out there. And vulnerability requires courage,
Hmm.
right? So how do you do that? Knowing to take something so deeply personal to you and then just letting it go out into the ether. Where do you find the courage?
I feel like there's sort of like two answers to that. So part of it is fundamentally I can't help myself. I've always just the way that I've walked through the world is I've wanted to process my feelings through music. And it's almost annoying sometimes. I'm going through through a big thing in my life. I'm like, oh, I have to write a song. Like, can I just feel this without having to turn it into something? But I'm grateful for that impulse. May it never go away. But it's part of it is just it's in my nature. I think I've just I have to process things the way that I process things. If I don't know what I'm feeling, I'll sit down at the piano or I'll pick up a guitar. Like when I wrote Paper Thin, I was feeling stuff and I just had the guitar in my hands, and I have this old voice memo of that moment, and I just started saying the words Paper Thin. And so it was less about I'm trying to write a song and more I'm just trying to process what I'm feeling, and that is coming out in the form of a song. So I feel like fundamentally that's why I make the music. But then, of course, I don't have to share it with people. Like that nobody has a gun to my head for me to share it with people. But I guess I do feel the impulse to share it, and my favorite music that I love of other artists. Those artists have been brave. They've been so specific with what was going on with them that
Yeah.
it allowed me to have that feeling of almost like how did they know? Like how did they know what I was feeling? Because I think if you make something that's just sort of really general, then it kind of doesn't hit anybody really personally. And of course, there's a time and place for sort of general music and having a good time or whatever, and that's okay. But the art and things in life that really hit me were the things that had that specificity, where the artist, the creator, was willing to put themselves out on a limb, and it just pierced right into my heart. And I think when you do go for that specificity, then you also limit the amount of people that are going to relate to it, because there's some people that are going to not relate to it all. But the people that do relate to it, it's going to hit them as in they can't believe that you've hit the nail on the head. So that's the kind of music that I love in my life, and I wanted to put that out there, and so that's why I've done it. And it's a risky thing, but at this point in my life and in my career, I have too much evidence to prove that it's worth it. The richness of my life, the quality of the people that I get to interact with, the sort of doors that it opens for me, personally, professionally, just the way that I get to be in the world because of what I'm putting out in the world, is a real blessing. And so I have all the motivation I need. And also,
Yeah.
like I said, internally, what it does for me.
Yeah. And you know what? You don't have to be a singer-songwriter like Peter is.
No.
When I do all the work that I do on corporate storytelling, I tell the participants, what's your unique story that you can put out there that others can connect with? And I have actually got like some of my CEOs to tell like a fairy tale or a mythological story that meant something to them, and people have really connected with it because we really need more of that humanity and personal touch in our organizations, and people crave it. And I completely agree with you that everybody is not going to like it, and that's the whole, again, I don't want to make this too much of a corporate speak, but that's the personal branding conversation. What do you stand for? What are you known for? And no,
Yeah.
everybody does not like your personal brand. There's some people who, I have some clients who can't get enough of me, and then there are others who will not touch me with a 10-foot pole, and I'm perfectly
Right.
okay with both. I'm not
That's a
everyone.
good sign.
It's a good sign. That means you're
It
doing
is,
something.
yeah.
You're standing for something. All right, so we are slightly already over time, but the number of hearts and likes that have come in, I have to ask you to play my new favorite song, which
Okay.
is the Book of Truth. If you could please do it. Thank you so much.
I'd be happy to. I'm just make sure I'm in tune here. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I just to finish that thought, absolutely, it's not just about being a musician. The way that we show up in whatever it is that we do, there's that opportunity to make it personal, to be creative about it. Even the way that you would run your program here, and this is an example of you applying yourself, doing something your own way, putting your own personal touch to it. There's so many examples of that it's not about music. Music is just the way that I do it, but there's everything under the sun as far as different ways of doing it. So, anywho, this is my newest song. It just came out a few days ago, fresh in the world. This is maybe one of my very, very, very first times performing it over the internet, and it's called Book of Truths. I've been staying up all night. I've been pacing through the halls. Been running every hill that I can find. I've been looking for the reason that you seem to be believing that the love that we've been living was a lie. And I hear you when you say you're so confused. Would it help for you to read from my book of truth? It says I love you, I love you, and I know what that means. It means my life without you is no life to me. We were traveling together, yeah, we ended up apart. I was looking at the signs and you the road. So I went where they were saying, didn't see your heart was trailing, didn't feel you falling further as we drove. And I'm sorry that he left you so confused. Wish there was comfort for you here in my book of truths. Like I love you, I love you, and I know what that means. It means my life without you is no life to me. And won't you tell me all the changes I can make? Tell me if you need a moment, I will wait. And if you teach me, I will learn it. Give me something I can work with, and I'll work without a moment of delay. 'Cause for me, when I think of you, I'm not confused. Writing bold on the cover page of my book of truths. It says I love you, I love you, and I know what that means. It means my life without you is no life to me. Do you love me? Do you love me? Can I ask you for real? When you think of life without me, how does that make you feel? And if you don't know, then I don't know where we both go from here. But if you're asking what my truth is, then my answer is clear.
That truly touches the heart. Your music truly touches the heart. I'm so grateful that I found you, and I'm so grateful that you found time to be on the finale of my first ever LinkedIn Live series. I've never done it before. I couldn't have asked for a better conclusion. Everybody is in love with your music. Um, I would love for everybody who is watching us to please share this on your profile. You have just been part of something very historic. I'm fairly certain there has not been the LinkedIn debut of a singer, and I'm so glad it happens to be Peter. You can find his music in iTunes and on his website. And now you know some stories behind what led to him coming up with that beautiful music. So thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for having joined me in these 5 days. And perhaps we'll do another sprint and we might have you back again. Good luck with the launch of the full album in fall, Peter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I wanted to mention peterkatz.com is kind of the best hub for people to go to. So thank you so much, Tanvi. And thanks to everyone for watching.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that after we're done with the live, I'll put a link in the comments as well for everybody for your website. But one can't forget that music easily, Peter. You are not depending on any website for people to remember you. Your music touches the heart, and then I can see that in the comments as well. So thank you so much. And with that, we come to the end of the 5-day series. It has been great having all of you with us. With all the various guests. Thank you so much for everybody who found time to join in live. And then, of course, there is a repeat broadcast. And I wish you a lot of health and luck and the certainty to know that we will all get through this together by looking out for each other. So thank you so much. Until next time, bye-bye.